Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. I am sad the Bulls didn't win the draft lottery, Tony. Say something to take my mind off of that.
Tony Kornheiser, here's something. Over their last 4 games, the Cubs have been outscored 40-11. How's that?
Yeah, that nice start we got off to, that's done. That's over.
You can't feel bad, Mike. You get in the hockey. You get in the hockey. You get in the can't-miss star in hockey, right? You got to feel good.
And the
last
last time we won the hockey lottery and drafted first, it was Patrick Kane, and we won 3. But I was hoping for Wilbon. I was going to get season tickets to everything back home. Everything. And now, not so much.
Yeah, you know what's a good idea? Get season tickets in San Antonio instead. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, the Spurs win Wembanyama, Heat and the Celtics tip off, and Scott Van Pelt joins us to preview the PGA Championship. But we begin today with the Denver Nuggets winning Game 1 of their conference final series with the Lakers last night. The Nuggets were ahead by over 20 points for much of the game, but the Lakers closed strong and were within 3 points with less than a minute to go. Afterwards, Anthony Davis said the Lakers were encouraged by their play in the second half. Wilbon, should they be?
Yeah, Tony, I think so. I mean, I'm not going to say, they should be happy because they lost a game. And when you go lose Game 1 to Denver like that, and you got a player as great as the Joker, I mean, it's not like you're going to be in the pole position to win Game 2, and they kind of need to get one of those first 2. But I just thought a couple of impressions from that. Darvin Ham is really good. A couple of former Washingtonians, Wizards. He put Rui Hachimura in an in-game adjustment on Joker. Try something to slow him down. Because Joker's first half was, it was Wilt-like. It was insane. It was a combination of like Wilt and Russell and Bill Walton. And he was just dominating the game in every way imaginable. And so I thought that the Lakers really found something that might work. Now, that same thing may not work in Game 2, but Darvin Ham, he is really a hell of a coach, and I know it's still his first year. He and LeBron together, they seem to figure out some stuff last night. That's the impression I walk away with. And so encouraged, Tony, is a fair and reasonable word and concept to me from what I took away.
So let me deal with that. Should the Lakers be encouraged? They closed well, that's nice, but they lost the game. Yeah. Anthony Davis had 40 points. How many games in this series is he going to get 40 points? He and LeBron got 66 together, and they did not win that game. So where I agree with you is this. I believe they have to win Game 2. That's where their encouragement will come from if they have figured this out and they win Game 2. That's an important, to me, that's an important thing. Anthony Davis uses the word encouraged. Let me give you a LeBron quote, because the LeBron quote, to me, is fabulous. Quote, in the postseason, it doesn't matter if you cut it to 1 or you're down 20. If you lose, you lose. That's reality to me. And also, Nikola Jokic, this is an unbelievable line in a playoff game against Anthony Davis, who's as big as he is and is a really good defender. Mike, 34 points, 21 rebounds, 14 assists. Yeah. That's an astonishing line.
He's great. Tony, again, people don't know Nikola Jokic, and now they're tuning in on the big stage. This isn't the bubble. They're going to go to Denver, and they're going to come back across the street from me right here in Los Angeles, and people are seeing Nikola Jokic. He's a wonder. And Anthony Davis absolutely held his own last night, but yet his coach had to go to like a plan B defensively late, and he did it. And it worked to a great degree, but it was a nice chess match, so a really nice Game 1, a really nice Game 1. The Eastern Conference Finals begin tonight in Boston. The Celtics are the favorites, but Heat star Jimmy Butler said yesterday, quote, this year is our year. We're going to go into this Game 1 and do what we're supposed to do and be the first one to 4, close quote. Tony, you said yesterday you're picking the Celtics after hearing from Jimmy Buckets. You still with Boston?
Yeah, I'm picking the Celtics because they finished second in the conference and Miami finished 7th, and it's the same conference and it's relatively the same schedule. And I'm picking the Celtics because they are healthy and Miami is still missing Tyler Hero and Victor Oladipo. And I'm picking the Celtics because they got to the NBA Finals last year, and to do it, they beat Miami in Game 7. Jimmy Butler is a great playoff player. It's beginning to look like Jason Tatum is a great playoff player as well. And I would just remind people that when Jimmy Butler says this is our year, just a few weeks ago, when they had to play Atlanta in a play-in game, Jimmy Butler guaranteed the victory, and Atlanta beat him, I believe, in Miami, and Jimmy Butler was 6 for 19 in that game.
Yeah, I think that Jimmy Butler should feel this way. There's no other way for him to feel, that they're going to go take game one. I mean, this is what he ought to say. So I'm not putting any stock in that. I put a lot of stock in the way Jimmy Butler plays in these playoff games, and I'm interested to see tonight. Look, Tony, the league now is, for 100 years, it was about the greatest of the big men. And then it became just a slew of great guards. Great, the best guards maybe of all time. But wingmen rule this league now. Whether you go from Kawhi Leonard a few years ago, and now you got Tatum and Brown on the Celtics, and you have Jimmy Butler, who fits that description. Of course, you're talking about LeBron, but you're talking about Jimmy Butler in this series. And Butler's going to be confronted with two guys who are going to be two huge speed bumps. And when they both play well, Tony, which is what I'm sort of thinking will happen too, and I'm like you, I'm saying, okay, Boston's just got too much. I mean, Jimmy Butler's great, but he's going to have to trump both these dudes, and I don't know that I see that. But Jimmy Butler has become a treat. In the spring, I want to see him, and I want to see an Eric Spoelstra coach team, and you're not going to get cheated when you see that. So I'm looking forward to game one.
Let's stay in the NBA but move off the court. The big look-ahead news for the league last night was that San Antonio won the draft lottery and the opportunity to pick Victor Wembanyama. Wilbon, does this feel like a good fit to you?
It feels like the perfect fit. If he wasn't going to my team, or one of them, he's going to a place, Tony, where they know how to nurture, shield when necessary, protect, develop, demand the organization, and particularly the head coach, Greg Popovich. And I don't know, at Pop now in 70-ish, I don't know how long he's going to stay. He can do whatever he wants. He's earned that with his resume. But just even being in that town, to have gone with David Robinson at number one and had a massive jump into prominence. And then Tim Duncan, of course, who came in to supplement already a championship David Robinson had won to win multiples. And now this kid in France, they got French players. You know, Tony Parker, he's pretty intimately familiar with Tony Parker and Boris Diaw. All the pieces seem to fit, all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I said this yesterday that San Antonio, among the teams with the best chance of getting him, Houston, Detroit, San Antonio I was favorably disposed to in that regard. I think that the connection with Tony Parker is very important. He played so many games with Greg Popovich, and he is French, and Wembanyama is French. And Wembanyama played on Tony Parker's team and was coached by Tony Parker's brother. I think that has to give him a comfort level. I mean, I really do. Yes. I think that has to give him a comfort level. Yes. And I'm sort of glad, and I mean, I don't know anything about the kid. I know he's young, and I know he's from France, but he's not going to a big city with a suffocating media presence. He's going to a place, a small city, where he can be nurtured, as you say, and take a little time to grow into this thing. So, to me, the perfect place was Charlotte with Jordan, but San Antonio is a good place for him. It's a good place.
Let's take them a while, Tony. It may take them a while to get enough players to contend. You looked pretty good yesterday when Michael was on the clock and had a shot at winning that thing. You looked pretty good yesterday.
It's all right. It's okay. Let's take a break. Coming up, PGA Championship begins tomorrow. Jon Rahm won the Masters, so should he be considered the favorite at Oak Hill? We're going to ask Scott Van Pelt.
We'll also ask him about the state of Rory McIlroy's relationship with the PGA.
Tomorrow, which makes it a perfect time to welcome in our man in Rochester, Mr. Scott Van Pelt. Scott, so let's start with this, Jon Rahm. Jon Rahm won the Masters. He's won 6 wins since October. He's number 1 in the world. Do you make him a heavy favorite in the PGA?
Not heavy, because I think that there are certainly not a long list of contenders, Tony, but a reasonable list of players who, if they won, would not be surprised. But if you're asking me who is the favorite, just based on the fact that every round Jon Rahm plays, I expect him to shoot 66 or 67. He is the favorite, but I do think that there are specific things a player must do well here that others can do that give them an opportunity to think that they're not too far behind John?
Well, Scott, I'm going to ask you about a couple of guys I think would be surprise people on that list you mentioned. Phil and Brooks Koepka sort of, some would say, outperformed expectations at the Masters, finishing tied for second, of course, behind Rahm. How does this set up for either or both of them? Are we going to get a double dip in the surprise land?
I can't imagine that Phil would have the type of week that he had at Augusta National, simply because you're going to have to drive the ball, not just reasonably well, Michael, you're going to have to drive it exceptionally well all week long. I like Brooks Koepka. I think that Brooks will, I told you at the Masters, I thought he would contend, and he did. I like Koepka to play well again here. He pounds it. He can fly the ball a mile. If he drives the ball well, I absolutely think he'll be in contention. But I'd be very surprised if Phil were able to drive it well enough for 4 rounds to be anywhere near the position he found himself at Augusta.
I want to ask you about Rory, of course, who's been a big topic of discussion going into this. The PGA Tour, of course, withheld $3 million, that bonus money, at least this far, from Rory after he pulled out of the Heritage. What is his sort of state of relationship with the tour now? We also heard him say yesterday that he was just going to sort of stay away from tour versus tour conversation for the next few weeks and concentrate on him. Where does this all put him, Scott?
I think Rory, as we know, right, he's thoughtful. He's interesting. He's a great soundbite because he is all the things I just described. I believe that a lot was on his plate from last summer forward, right? He became the de facto voice of the tour. He didn't ask for that role. He sort of was thrust into it, and then he didn't ask out of it. And after a year's worth of this, I don't blame him for sort of raising his hand and saying, I'm good, right? You know where I stand about all of this. And after he missed the cut, Michael, at Augusta, and he did not play down at Harbor Town, it did cost him $3 million. Now, to be clear, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but this was that player of the PIP money for the sort of social media presence and all the different ways that you can amplify the tour, and it was $12 million, and so he's getting $3 million less of it. He's obscenely wealthy. It's not like someone came and took it out of a safe in his home. So the money piece is not something to concern ourselves with. I just think Rory needed a 20-second, made it a full, and just needed to hit the reset button on a lot of things. And that's probably useful for anybody, and I don't blame him. I think, as I described with Koepka, Rory drives it as well as anyone on earth. He'd be a guy I would not be shocked at all if he played well here, particularly coming out of a bit of time where I think he kind of reassessed.
Scott, let me go back to something you said earlier in the conversation, that there are certain players out here who have certain skills that can handle this particular course maybe as well or maybe even better than Rahm. What are those? Who are those players, and what are those things at this particular course? What are its idiosyncrasies?
It demands that you hit your ball off the tee into the fairway, period. Now, I shouldn't say period, maybe comma, a long ways out there. You've got to be able to move it off the tee, but it has to be straight because the rough here is going to be so punishing, so penalizing that I think it eliminates you if you don't do that. And then from there, ball striking and off the tee combined are what you are looking for. So I'm talking about a Morikawa. I'm talking about a Victor Hovland. I'm talking about a name that might not be at the top of everyone's list, but it's a Gary Woodland who has won a major championship. Those are the things you've got to do to give yourself a chance. I haven't said Scotty Scheffler yet. He can clearly do all of those things. I just think if you're a little bit reckless, a little bit wayward, you have zero chance, none at Oak Hill. So hit it a long way, hit it straight, and then from there you're going to have to be precise to give yourself the spots on the greens where you'll have chances to make birdies. Guys, there just aren't that many holes that you're going to see players have great opportunities for birdie. There's not the 13th at Augusta where you say you should make birdie here. That hole just doesn't exist out here at Oak Hill. Pars are going to be good scores, so it feels a bit like a U.S. Open in that sense, Tony. But it's driving, it's ball striking. Maybe that's boring, but it's going to really add up nicely here.
All right, I'll get you out of here on this. I went to college in Binghamton, which is south of Rochester. And in Binghamton in mid-May, I've been there for 3 to 5 inches of snow. Is weather going to be a factor at Rochester? Because I think this morning it was in the 30s.
It was, Tony. I'm anticipating a weather delay on Thursday. There'll be a frost delay almost certainly, which means that my wake-up call, I'm getting up early regardless to see all of our friends on ESPN Plus, 7 a.m. Eastern Time. I don't think we'll be talking about golf at that point. I feel certain that there'll be a delay. There's supposed to be a little rain later in the week as well. I don't think it's anything like what we saw at Augusta, but cold temperatures will be a factor early. I feel like if you go late Thursday, early Friday, that might be the benefit. We often see a wave sort of impact which side of the draw has the better of it. I think late, early Thursday, Friday is where you want to be given what we're anticipating finding.
Thank you so much, Scott. Have a good time broadcasting it.
No frost delays out here,
it.
baby. We don't do frost out west. No.
The live stream.
I miss you. I love you. Be good, boys.
Be good.
The live stream of the PGA Championship begins on. He won 3 NCAAs at Baylor, not to mention a title as a player in 1982 at Louisiana Tech. So among women's basketball coaches, only Gino Auriemma and the late Pat Summitt have more rings than Mulkey. LSU should be loaded again next year. The Lady Tigers return Angel Reese, the Final Four MVP, and SEC Freshman of the Year, Flau'jae Johnson. Plus, they've gone to the transfer portal to get All-Americans Anissa Morrow from DePaul and Haley Van Lith from Louisville. So get ready for more sparkly and feathery jackets from Mulkey.
Tony, I mean, aren't you going to want to see South Carolina and LSU? I mean, you're going to want to see that matchup. You're going to want to see LSU and Kim Mulkey every time they play. I mean, she's gone there and built a monster.
Yeah, I want to see Iowa in that mix too.
Iowa in the mix too.
Happy anniversary, Phillies. Around this day 44 years ago, the Phillies beat the Cubs in Wrigley 23-22 in the highest scoring baseball game in modern MLB history. Phillies got 7 runs in the top of the first. Cubs came back with 6 in the bottom. Starting pitchers Fred Lurch of Philadelphia and Dennis Lamp of Chicago chased after 1/3 of an inning, giving up a combined 11 earned runs. Philly put up 8 more runs in the third. They were up 17-6 in the fourth. But the Cubs caught fire. They scored 13 runs in the next 3 innings. Eventually, a Cubs single tied the game at 22-22 in the 8th. And ultimately, Mike Schmidt hit a homer off Bruce Sutter in the 10th for the 23-22 final.
One of the thrilling Cub games ever. Of course, a loss back then. I think WGN did an alternate broadcast ending for that in the winter, in the offseason. And I think WGN wisely, with Jack Brickhouse screaming, hey, hey, had Ernie Banks hit a home run to win it. That's about the only way the Cubs are going to win some of those games in the 70s, Tom.
Happy trails, Domingo Germán. The Yankees starter was ejected last night by umpire James Hoy, who said of Germán's goopy hand, it's a quote, "It's the stickiest hand I've ever felt." The Yankees beat the Blue Jays last night 6-3, largely because Aaron Judge didn't peek into his dugout and still hit a 448-foot 2-run homer to give the Yankees a 5-3 lead. Judge was steamed that the Blue Jays basically accused him of cheating the night before when he peeked into his dugout before hitting a home run. Curiously, the Blue Jays reliever who served up that home run, Jay Jackson, conceded he may have been tipping his pitches, and Jackson was summarily dispatched to AAA after that game.
Doesn't that force you, if you're that team, to issue an apology after your pitcher goes out and says, I was probably tipping my pitches, huh?
I would think. Let's go to the big finish. Chris Haynes of Bleacher Report reports that your boy James Harden will opt out of his contract and pursue a 4-year deal. Your thoughts?
You want to pay James Harden like $200 million until he's like 37, 38 years old? From what you just saw, you'd be a fool to deal out some max deal like that. Adam Silver says the NBA is investigating Ja, but assumes the worst. Your reaction?
Adam Silver thinks it was a gun, and you can't have a gun.